Free. An African Weekly Roundup with your speaker Andrew Irumba Katsabe every Monday. I am always with my comrades. Comrade Lisafri Thomas, a veteran journalist and researcher. I'm adding the word veteran journalist.
I'm veteran.
I have elevated you now. You're a veteran journalist.
I moved from senior to veteran.
Veteran senior researcher. Veteran journalist and senior researcher. Comrade Lisafri Thomas, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Comes from France. Rutatina. The man has started fearing a little bit. Comrade Rugarama, my elder, is the chairman of the Pan-African Movement Uganda chapter. Andrew Irumba Katsabe is your speaker. Comrade, 1 hour throughout the world in a Pan-African context. Let's begin with South Sudan. I will begin with you, Comrade Rugarama. Over the weekend, last week, President William Ruto, after Raila Odinga failed at the AU Commission chairmanship race, he now appointed him as a special envoy to South Sudan. He took a flight, reached South Sudan, Juba. He met with the real president of the country, Riach Machar. When it came to meeting his deputy, vice president, he met the president, Salva Kiir. When it came to meeting his vice president, Dr. Riach Machar, he was amused when he was told that you need to first take a flight, go to Kampala, and to be specific, Entebbe, meet the president of that country to seek permission to see the vice president of this other country. Go to Uganda, meet the president of Uganda, get the permission, come back to South Sudan to meet the vice president of this country.
Excellent.
How do you like that? How do you like that?
Good morning, Comrade Rutatin Safri, my brother from another mother.
Hey.
Good morning, Comrade and our speaker, Irumba Katsabe Andrew, and good morning to you, our esteemed viewers on very many platforms. First and foremost, I want to extend my apologies to all of you for coming on a Pan-African show when I'm dressed in the manner in which I'm dressed.
You're a lawyer, me, I understand you, because from here you're going to represent the client. So
I wanted to give that as a justification, since you have already given it, so I will hold my peace.
You're a lawyer. It is only the suffering who has no excuse. It is just he's colonizing us.
I have a good excuse.
The color is the excuse.
This one
I'm going to get you a an African attire.
We can do that.
I'm going to give you an African attire so that on a Pan-African show, you appear in a Pan-African attire.
Correct.
So this excuse will stop.
I need to get.
For this one is.
I need my Pan-African brothers to dress
for
me.
Comrade Rugarama to appear like this on a Monday morning.
It's okay.
I know, because our show takes 1 hour. After 1 hour, he goes to
Absolutely
to represent his client. I agree with you.
I thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for that understanding, and I hope our viewers
will understand
especially the Pan-African fraternity will understand this too. I'm certainly in that regard reminded of one of our comrades in the Pan-African struggle who was invited to Havana, Cuba, and he appeared dressed in the way I'm dressed, and he was denied the microphone. And when he inquired, he said, no, you cannot appear on the Pan-African platform dressed in
when you are arrested already. You look arrested.
And he said, but you see, the most important thing is what is in my head, not what is outside my head. And they were like, that is a debate for another day. As of now, you have got to dress appropriately. So there are comrades.
Just like you appear before the court and
they will not
and
see
they
me.
tell you, I am not seeing you when actually you are there physically.
They will not
but
see
the judge says, sorry, I cannot see you.
Absolutely. Mr. Speaker, sir, I saw that statement. I read it from other platforms, and since you have repeated it here, we need to constantly remind ourselves of who at times controls situations. The situation in Southern Sudan now, or South Sudan, Southern Sudan would be a different thing altogether. The situation in the country called South Sudan has gone beyond the limits of a family, in the sense that when a man and a woman, a wife and a husband, take the battle out of their bedroom through the sitting room to the public street, they cannot tell the neighbors who have now intervened that don't interfere in our domestic affairs. No, you have already
You are the one who has brought it to the
taken
public domain.
the domestic affairs to the public affair.
domain.
So therefore, in that regard, the players now, and probably even stronger players, may not necessarily be the natives of South Sudan as a country. And I think whoever is appointed as a peacemaker or somebody to restore peace in South Sudan should be well abreast with the hidden intelligence report of the unfoldings within South Sudan. That all right, the protagonists may be the SPLM in opposition and SPLM in leadership, who by their agreement are now in a government together, but because the agreement itself has almost irretrievably broken down, there are other stronger stakeholders whose opinion matter. And I think that is what was being reminded of our senior citizen, Mzee Baba Raila Odinga, that it is very important in this chessboard to seek the opinion of Mzee Kaguta Yoweri Museveni, although that one may be the President of the Republic of Uganda. In my opinion, really, and probably diplomatically put, that is the message which was being put. And if you want me to go beyond that, I can also tell you that because I have heard you in an attempt to address your mind to this very problem of South Sudan, and remember, I was part and parcel of the South Sudan 2011 independence, that referendum. The Pan-African movement was given a mandate to do civic education and later on to ensure that all South Sudanese who were in Uganda were civically empowered and later on went to the polls, because the voting also took place here, and a very big part in Western Nile was voting, all these refugees and the ones who were in Kampala. So in that regard, therefore, we are stakeholders in the affairs of South Sudan, and we feel extremely pained when certain things are not got right. Even when there was an agreement written that within 44 months they were going to form a government, they were going to have elections. We are now almost in 80 months or 70-something months, 77 plus months, and nothing of that kind has happened. Now, it also tells you, by way of summarizing on this really, because there is quite a lot that we can say about what is happening in South Sudan. In my opinion, I think what we have as the biggest problem in Southern Sudan is the gradual, consistent death of real, ideologically upright and conscious African breed of leaders who are fast dying down, in the sense that Do we have a Patrice Lumumba, for instance, in South Sudan?
Garang.
Do we have, even before we got the Patrice Lumumba, Thomas Sankara, do we have a Dr. John Garang in South Sudan? Because
he was the Lumumba of this place.
Dr. John Garang, you remember when he came here in at Equatorial Hotel? I don't know if you are with us, but you should. You are younger.
Yeah, was young.
Probably you didn't come over, but I will remind you. He made a presentation. I will share it with you and later on with the audience, where he said it is not necessary for South Sudan to be divided into two countries, but the powers at that time who were interested in having Sudan divided into two were beyond the South Sudanese, and probably that is another debate also for another day. But I want to assure you
These were the
that had they left the decision, had for instance Dr. John Garanga not died, and he remained steadfast in his agenda of having one Sudan, he would have even won the presidency, because the problem, as he correctly observed, and in leadership, is not the mutation of a country into smaller particles, but the ideological crystallization and ability to civically empower the populace to be able to realize what their problems are and how to overcome them. And what is lacking, therefore, in South Sudan, like in the majority actually of countries, because it is not only happening in Uganda, I mean in Africa. We had the similar problem in Yugoslavia, some countries where even one country was divided into two, not one, not two. There are others, even in Europe now, if you go to Spain, the Catalonians, they want to break away. So even Europe, by the way, is at pains. They are deceiving. You go to the so-called Great Britain, the Catholics are fighting with the Anglicans. You see, and they always want to break away from them. So generally speaking, the fact of that mankind is such a complex thing is alive and well. And the President of the Republic of Uganda in 2010 noted in South Africa, when he was presenting his paper titled the Africa's Problem, and his paper was about the bottlenecks of Africa. The bottlenecks of Africa, one of them, there were 11 bottlenecks of Africa that he pointed out, and his paper was sent for the peer review to be incorporated. And he pointed out a number of them, but one of them was ideological bankruptcy. We suffer a lot of that ideological bankruptcy in our political class, to the extent that what we are now seeing in South Sudan is nothing but a replica of that ideological bankruptcy. We need to work on that.
They are ideologically bankrupt.
They are not alone.
There's no
unfortunately.
Direction. There's no direction
Yes.
in the intellectual way of how to develop this land that no one really wanted to develop before. If you don't come with a strategy and you follow the strategy for 20 years because what you want is clear, then you're gonna go different directions, and we're gonna see it as those are just loops, you know?
Zigzag.
Those are zigzags.
So
But,
go straight to the same.
when it comes to the situation right now, for a foreigner, it's amazing how Museveni is powerful.
Begin with your analysis on Raila Odinga.
Yeah, and Raila Odinga. The power of Uganda. The power of Uganda is so bright that it makes Kenyan like such a little boy. So I'm sorry to say that some people might feel offended by this, but like if you look the amount of power a country like Uganda, that is a GDP that is around like 40% of the GDP of Kenya, the amount of power that Uganda gather in DRC and in South Sudan, comparing to Kenya, Kenya have to ask authorization to enter South Sudanese politics from Entebbe. And when I heard that Raila Odinga was coming from Kenya directly to Juba, I originally thought like that's a funny thing to do. I thought he would do it with IGAD, I thought he would do it with other players. But now he goes there, he's sent back to Entebbe. Imagine the message, right? So if you look at like Kenya as was once one of the power of East Africa, a lot of people see Kenya as one of the power of East Africa. Clearly the real power is here in Entebbe, Kampala. The power is not in Kenya, the power is not in South Sudan, the power is not even in the east of Congo. Okay, it's shared with Kigali. But what I'm saying is that for such a situation to happen shows the power that Uganda has and the strategy that Uganda has taken to base its diplomacy with strong arms, strong weapons, right? When you see what's happening in the east of Congo right now with the Ugandan army, right? So now the rebels, they've been fighting them so hard, they're running to the forest, right? Kodeko. They're running to the forest. When they run to the forest, they sit with the Congolese army, and then they find new strategies, you know? Where is Kenya in Congo? Where is Kenya in South Sudan? They are nowhere there. They are nowhere there. They have no power right now on the ground.
They are in Juba with the banks. Equity Bank is there. We have no bank.
Maybe their banks are powerful, but clearly right now the banking system is off in east of Congo.
Yeah, with no security, all right.
The Ituri region is taken by the UPDF. So when we think of such things, it's astonishing. First point is astonishing the power of Museveni in this crisis.
Museveni is the most powerful man in the region.
There is no way, I don't know if you agree with me, but there is no way Salva Kiir would have felt confident to put Machar in some sort of a semi-jail system. At home, house arrest, but no one is at his home anyway. So, house arrest. Without Museveni...
I want to ask you, so if Dr. Riach Machar cannot be accessed unless you have President Museveni's approval, does that suggest that it is actually Museveni's army that has put Dr. Riach Machar under house arrest?
No, but what it means is that he has put Salva Kiir confident enough to do that, right? So for me, the way I see it, and once again, I have explained to the previous show that I don't have enough inside contact in South Sudan as in other countries, but my sense is that you have a conflict between Machar and Salva Kiir, right? And then Museveni has said clearly that he's supporting Salva Kiir in that situation. So Muzi has said, no, listen, we're sending our troops because they probably suspect that with the move that Salva Kiir was doing, especially in the south, things would happen, right? And then things happened. The helicopters and the battle in the Upper Nile region. So then when those things happened, Salva Kiir felt confident enough to put Riach Machar under house arrest because he knew UPDF were on his side and UPDF would back him up, and UPDF was stronger than whatever forces as Riach Machar. So
maybe some information, Comrade Rutatina. The truth of the matter, Comrade Speaker, is that the SPLA M in opposition and SPLA, if you like, again in opposition, Machar, Dr. Riach Machar, strength has been weakening over time. You don't need to be a rocket scientist for you to see that the power, for instance, from 2015, if you like, which Dr. Machar worded in South Sudan, has steadily, up to the present day, weakened. And with the weakening power of Machar, our president,
President Museveni.
Salva Kiir has been consolidating, albeit also with problems, of course. Is not consolidating at the speed he should have consolidated. Remember that they are in this kind of coalition which both of them don't respect. And that is very fundamental. They are in a coalition, they are in a marriage of convenience. And they entered there, each of them thinking that with time he is going to weaken the other. It is unfortunate that probably Machar, who is what should I call it? Because you see, Machar has got a history of allying with Khartoum, even at the time when the rest of the entire South Sudan was like, no, this is not the person to ally ourselves with. Now there is the mistrust, the level of mistrust, even when they are in this coalition, is so high that it was just a matter of time. It was a matter of when, not if, that Machar was going to be relegated to the peripheral to which he has been relegated. And I don't see him, by the way, I don't see him that now he has been fixed where he has been fixed. I don't see him coming out now.
So you met Garang. You talk with him.
For us, we were not meeting Garang. We were Garang as children, because Mabior is my brother. Only that he's a stupid boy.
Okay.
And we were telling him, we used to tell him that, look here,
The son of Garang.
me, Othieno, Stephen, Gund, the son to our former chairman of Uganda AIDS Commission, not Chumro. This Gund, Professor Nanturia. So the son is called Nanturia Paul. Is finishing up his
So
PhD.
Garang was an intellectual.
All
right?
those, we are the children
He was a
of
thinker.
Dr. Garang, and
Garang was a brain.
absolutely,
No, that's
and
what
we
everyone
have
tell me.
consistently reminded our brother, the Mabior, that he's not the only son. No, and it doesn't make sense that he was produced. But no, all of us are children of Dr. Garang, and we can take over anytime.
But
So
like-
let him behave.
If you compare Machar, Salva Kiir, and Garang, like, do you really feel like Garang was a level up?
He was miles away.
was
You know,
miles
you can
away.
be in a class. When you are in
Yeah,
a class,
you are in your own
and
class.
in terms of
Like the
performance,
Lumumba, the Sankara.
you become the first. So assuming that Dr. Garang was actually a 95 percentage scorer,
Yeah.
these ones who are coming second and third
Then 20%.
are in 51,
20.
43. So
51
you cannot even argue that you say I was the second. You are the second with what percentage
They're in
score?
25. 20, 25.
This guy is doing this.
I have not-
Yeah, he's being very dismissive.
I have not seen, let me tell you, even that semblance of leadership
Yeah.
and peace, stability we are seeing in South Sudan,
Yeah.
it is coming from Entebbe. And you are right.
So I was continuing, comrade, to say that what we therefore have in South Sudan is a betrayal, because if, for instance, our founding fathers of the independence of Africa, if, for instance, you can have Comrade Olympiokos, Comrade Amilcar Cabral, Comrade Ben Bera, Comrade
Thomas Sankara.
Asafouke, Comrade Thomas Sankara, Comrade Osejefo Kwame
Kwame
Nkrumah,
Nkrumah.
Comrade
Kenneth Kaunda.
if you like, if, for instance, they were to wake up,
Julius
you see
Nyerere.
Julius Nyerere, if they were
Jomo
to wake
Kenyatta.
up and they find
Jomo
out
Kenyatta.
what is happening now with the crop
Julius Nyerere, Jomo Kenyatta.
of leadership on the African continent, I can assure you, majority of them would weep.
No, they would wish to go back to their
You
graves.
see, so
will get
therefore, they would kill
When we have
themselves.
leaders like
They would
this, they
kill
get killed.
themselves
They want to go back.
and go back to their graves. So therefore, the point I'm making is that even when we have got
These white
external factors in South Sudan, because the external factors are there, I will, for instance, tell you that in mutilating Sudan in 2-2, the global forces that were emanating from America hoped, because America facilitated, United States of America hoped so seriously so, since majority of the wells, the oil wells, were in South Sudan, that they were going to win for themselves the lucrative deals of the oil reserves within South Sudan. Now, it has not happened that way because China, an equally superpower on the other side, has been winning so many contracts within South Sudan, albeit not being put to good use. And that has been to the chagrin of United States of America. No wonder that this kind of rebel activity, if you like, misrule, mismanagement, has just been allowed to flourish the way it is flourishing. What we need, therefore, also to remind ourselves of is that, look, like Chunwachebe said that the problem of Nigeria is leadership, which speaks to the entire African continent and elsewhere, because I have noted here and elsewhere that mismanagement, poor leadership is not a preserve of Africa. It is everywhere. But certain geographical jurisdictions have reached a certain level where they try their level best not to have their internal problems exposed so glaringly to the rest of the world. If you asked, I will tell you that in my opinion, Greece is a failed state, so to speak. But because it is a member of the European Union, the other European members, France, German has been bailing out to Greece about 5 times. But Greece has consistently not even been able to manage her own finances. The economy has had a negative turn down for the last about 15 years or so. But if it were possible, they would have even chased it long ago from. There are so many African countries now which are much better than the much hyped so-called European country called Greece. And yet, it is assumed, or for that matter, in an attempt to murder history, that Greece is the foundation of the European civilization. It is so said. Even when we know, especially when you read the material of our very senior historian on African matters, Dr. Riach, and his other comrades, that Greece was stealing a lot of literature from Africa. But that is another debate now for another day. The point in South Sudan is that because of marked stakeholders within the affairs of South Sudan, and South Sudan itself failing to give birth to credible Pan-African, civically aware, ideologically clear leaders, they, even when they try to twist, because you see, what do we have? What we have is that you will get a country like Cuba, a country like Venezuela, which will disagree with America, but when they get alliance in Russia or China, they are going to put.
They move along.
They are going to put to use.
They walk along.
That alliance.
Yeah.
For us, if for instance, United States of America has been denied lucrative deals in South Sudan, what about our alliance, the alliance of South Sudan with China? Has it given birth to all the provinces in South Sudan getting modern hospitals? Have there been a deal for Salva Kiir to say, for you to do lumbering in my country with these serious forests, with these minerals I have, you have got in every prefecture, you have got to put there modern hospitals and equip them and then train the South Sudanese health systems, the nurses, the doctors, have a 3-5 year program with China, with Russia. Say, now, I am giving you access to our minerals, but in turn put infrastructure, hospitals, build roads. Have they done that? Then at the same time, bring the likes of his comrades like Yoweri Kaguta Museveni and others, say you are going to help me on the path of empowerment, civic empowerment, Pan-African ideological revolutionarization of my people, such that they now don't see each other as enemies, but they should be able to identify the problems which beset us as a community, not as Nuas, not as Dinkas, not as Achoris, no. What is happening in South Sudan, and I think some comrades have brought it out, I want to add my voice to it, is that they have turned militarism into a business. They have got no functioning economy. Economy is in limbo. No factories, no cottage industries, no proper education. It is only militia to protect just cows and goats. They raid each other. In a manner of speaking, they're in a primitive society. And when they get a leader who is their friend, like His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, he should give them his own history. NRA found a very polarized society here in Uganda. The northern Uganda for a very long time was cut off from Uganda. How come now northern Uganda is a darling? There has been a lot of reintegration and a lot of peace and hence development. Why? Because we have got the issue of civic empowerment correctly. So you have to learn to be able, when you are pacifying a society, be able to know what the problems are. The problems of the Dinkas is not the Nuas, and the problems of the Nuas is not the Dinkas or the Achoris or the various tribes they have in the region called South Sudan. It is not. The problem is that the problem is the inability for them to open their inner eyes. The mindset. To be able to see that, wait a minute, we don't have hospitals.
Is it because,
with the drugs.
Is it because we are neighbors with the Nuer?
Thank you very much.
That we don't have
proper roads.
Is it because of the Nuer?
Our life expectancy is dwindling.
Is it because of the Nuer?
There is arms proliferation because of the porous borders, and there is no clear leadership. We don't have an ideology. As what is the ideology? I want to believe, for instance, that the spirit of the late Dr. John Garang must be turning, because the kind of ideology, the kind of SPLA and SPLM that was in his head, which he was translating. You can even see his PhD in agriculture economics was not just in words, because he wanted to transform. I remember he had even given us the Pan-African movement. He said, I can give you a size of Rwanda or even slightly above in my country for agriculture. Nobody contests. I was writing to one of the ministers then to remind him, who was in our meeting at Equatoria. He said it's available, but in the circumstances in which South Sudan is, how can you,
the equivalent of
Rwanda to practice agriculture? Because our philosophy was, our philosophy was that we can feed the world, and he agreed. He said it himself, and he's on record. And all those people who were there, even the current leadership, but because of the kind of turmoil which is there, it is very impossible for you to be allowed to practice anything.
You narrowed it down to ideological bankruptcy. All the words you have said, you have just you summarized them in one word: ideological bankruptcy of the South Sudanese. The problems they are having are not as a result of the other tribes, Nuer, Dinka, and so on. It's a problem of
ideology. Used to say the problem of Africa is the lack of political imaginations. It's not the exact translation, but they used to say that we need to have that political imaginations to do things differently from what has been imposed on us for a long time.
And by the way, when you're talking about Thomas Sankara, I want to give you good news that he's incarnate last week
Yeah, Traore.
You know what he did?
Yeah, I saw.
You saw what he did.
Yeah.
The man is, and he's in a supersonic speed, my comrade. You know supersonic speed?
He refused the mosques and he said, no, you bring...
Yes. Instead of bringing me a mosque, he was telling this the world who want to donate mosques.
For
you see? And
He told
terrible.
my people are not learning, are not lacking where to pray from. My people are lacking agricultural input, infrastructure, hospitals, and so on. So instead of giving me 500 mosques across the country,
What is it for?
just give me 3 hospitals.
It's interesting, like Kagame has done almost the same thing with closing a lot of churches last year.
Kagame closes some mosques. These ones who put it,
churches,
who put it
said we have
in
enough churches for this country.
you, comrade, you are above 18. You know what time you want to pray and you know which religion you want to belong to.
Yeah.
You are here, you are Catholic, you are working at 1 p.m. Somebody brings the kizindaro. At 1 p.m. shouts for you. Why don't you go inside and pray to your Allah? Then also for me, on Sunday I will go in my church and pray. But you want to force me to listen to you.
That is, you see, again, when you look at a man called Yoweri Kaguta Museveni's paper, the one which I referred to earlier on, the problem, the 11 bottlenecks of Africa. He also mentions something to do with these differences on religion, differences on
culture,
sex, and being very, because when you look at the wars which we have fought on the African continent and the ones which we are still fighting now, if you put them on a weighing scale and you analyze them, I can assure you more than half are actually on the basis of differences on religion. That we are different, we don't practice the same religion, and it's the same thing that was happening in Sudan, by the way. And at one time you remember that Bashir proposed to Dr. John Garang that why don't you become an Arab, by the way. Meaning that it's possible for one to even change a tribe. He said, no, you can become an Arab. And we have seen in a battle in the United States of America, there are some blacks, and you have to give a thumbs up to this thing called
Black economic empowerment.
which you term when you kill this man in you called self. When self-determination, when self is killed in you, you don't know who you are. So many things go wrong. There are people who come up and say, for me, I'm white. And there is nothing against whites.
Another one,
like there is
another one man comes and says, me I'm gay, me I'm a woman.
You know, you see those differences. Somebody doesn't know who you are, and in knowing who you are, it does not stop you from making meaningful collaborations with the rest of the
different people.
Let Resafri know I am this, and there is no crime in that. Let Rugarama know I am this, and there is no crime in that. Let no any other person try to influence the other negatively to achieve certain objectives.
Okay,
So-
I want to give time to Comrade Resafri. He has
Maybe-
not spoken for some time.
One of the interesting points of that Odinga visit, right, is to show the power that Museveni has in the whole situations, right? So when we look at this evidence, we can imagine.
I think he was still doubting him when they told him there and he had to come here. That's when he believed.
I mean, Raila is someone as well, but the fact that he's in this situation. So Riach Machar is not under arrest without the permission of the power breakers here, right? So what it seems to me is that now he has two choices. The first one is to stay under arrest and try to be little, but obviously he's not going to do that. The second one is to fight those alliances that are against him, right? And where is he going to find an alliance? Where is he going to find partners that can go against Museveni? Clearly not in Kenya, clearly not in Congo, clearly not in the neighboring state, right?
Not
The
in
only
Rwanda.
help he can receive is from the RSF, right? In North Sudan, in Sudan. And I do think like this is one of the things like we might see him trying to help the RSF in South Sudan so he can sort out his own situations. But if the power line is as clear as it seems like, we can say goodbye to our friends Machar, because it doesn't seem like he's going to come out of this really confident, really strong. So as I said, the one that can oppose Museveni in the region is not born yet. He's not born yet.
This one is putting more salt in the argument. He's not yet born.
He's not yet born.
By the time he's born, to make 35 years to
so
start,
even Machar himself, if he tried to oppose, even Machar himself, if he tried to do certain things in the southern provinces of South Sudan, where he has stronghold, he's gonna fail. He's gonna find the UPDF right here, right? And so in that situation, it is quite clear that this idea of a civil war, I don't really buy it now. And now that I see the situation, I see more of a power shift in the elite than a potential civil war. However, we need to be careful with the amount of weapons that is in Sudan right now. And those weapons going to the south, and the south factions, the northern power playing with southern factions, right? It would be interesting for them to maybe have a South Sudan that is on their side, right? To win the war in Khartoum. So we don't want the escalation of South Sudan, the war of North Sudan, of Sudan in South Sudan. I think it's quite clear. As you said earlier, what we can fear is the militarization of the economy. The fact that the only economy available is a military options, military economy. So you have those that goes to conference in Nairobi, they got stipend and all that. They are in the business of making peace, right? And those ones clearly are also an interest into war. And you have those that can have an interest into militarizing the process. But what I see now more clearly is that nothing is going to happen to south of Sudan without the control of Uganda. And when you see how Uganda is in control in what it does in Congo and what it does in Sudan, we should be safe here.
Comrade Safri, Uganda is a guarantor to the peace, to the peace agreements of South Sudan. Is a guarantor. When they take UPDF there, without the common agreement with the rest of the guarantors, where even you have one faction of the conflict, Dr. Riach Machar's faction, complaining and writing to UN and African Union that
Uganda has killed civilians. I saw that.
And even they said this has now marked the end of the peace agreement.
Yeah.
How do you analyze that? Is Uganda now fueling the conflict in South Sudan, or they are solving the problem? Because once these are two factions,
as I said in our last
and you,
show,
Uganda, you are the parent of these two. Mm-hmm. You are the parent. You are a guarantor.
Yeah, your father.
Now you are clearly showing side.
Yeah.
You on the side of Salva Kiir.
Correct.
Dr. Riach Machar right now can even allege that I'm under house arrest courtesy of UPDF, because when Raila Odinga went to see him, they told him go to Kampala and seek permission.
So when right now Riach Machar is probably looking for allies, right? And then in looking for allies, he look in the south, and in the south he found Entebbe. Entebbe have make a choice. Then he can go to Congo, but clearly Congo is not going to oppose like Uganda right now geopolitically. So all the southern power, he goes to Kenya. Now Kenya can't even like bypass Museveni to speak to him, right? So he's probably looking at where? In the north. So Riach Machar is probably looking right now in factions in the north and in faction in Central Africa, right? Central Africa and Sudan are probably the two places looking for factions in order to grow back his power. But it seems like it's the end of an era. It's the end of that era. It is highly possible that he's unable to do anything, and that what we see is a stronghold of Museveni in the region. He has froze. It's possible Uganda is freezing the situation right now, and it comes out in a moment once again where there is less revenue for petrol in South Sudan, right? So I think like the cake was divided into three.
Actually, comrade, there is no revenue, if you like. There is absolutely no revenue from oil in southern Sudan.
Because of the pipeline.
All the pipelines, all the wells have since collapsed. The oil is down there, but the ability of the investor to extract that oil is zero as it is. And some 2 oil wells, by the way, are still the biggest, are still being contested between the north and the south.
Yeah, they haven't agreed
on who actually owns them. Although we all know at the back of our mind, without necessarily having to support South Sudan, that they belong to South Sudan. But what is more still in your time, if you will permit, what is more, like the speaker was asking, and I find his question very interesting. There are no 2 factions. There is such a thing as the leadership, a leadership in South Sudan. And that leadership is composed of the 2 former factions, being the Dr. Machar and yes. Now, what is happening is that whatever differences they had, they melted them into that agreement and they formed a government. The problem is that they are refusing to recognize the fact that they are in one government.
No, but it seems like, let me see, what I see is more like you have less revenue from petrol because of the Sudanese war, right? So suddenly the cake gets smaller. So those guys used to have a cake, and I think the cake was shared in 3 pieces. One was for Salva Kiir, one was for Riach Machar, one was for like Ugandan's businesses, right? So those were the 2 entities that used to get the most money from the state of South Sudan, which used to get its revenue from the oil of South Sudan. Now that this has shrinked, UPDF and Uganda is clearly not losing his hands here. Those that are losing really like the faction of that cake are Riach Machar. And I think that's why he's been trying to refight, to have some contestation in the south and all that. Because at the end of the day, he's feeling he's losing power, and power is about to get lost. The cake is being shared with
Comrade, I will give you 2 minutes, and I also give him 2 minutes, and I'll get out of here. Comrade Rugarama, I will start with you. That group called SPLA and SPLA M in opposition
and
signed a peace agreement, and under that peace agreement in 2015, under that peace agreement, among the very critical issues they were supposed to implement was the general elections. This is 2025. Salva Kiir, even if you asked him right now, do you see a small star, a munyenye? Do you see some little light?
Glimmer.
It's called a glimmer.
A glimmer of hope.
A glimmer, okay. You see a glimmer of hope of you conducting an election at least in the next 20 years. He has no answer. Even if you said 20 years, he has no answer. Number 2.
But does South Sudan need democracy, right?
Number 2, that agreement 2015 was based on the fact that there were only 2 people who had disagreed, and they were together. When they disagreed, they made this part. The moment they made this, there has since been 12 more rebel groups contesting that same agreement. 12 so far, rebel groups which were not part of this agreement. These 12 rebel groups also have their own demands, and they were not part of this peace agreement. So right now, last Friday we had a delegate to the peace negotiation team. He told us Salva Kiir has been trying to absorb every group with the interests, to try to bring them on table. But every time you bring every group, another one emerges, and each one that emerges, they come with an expense. It means it is your bag, it is your budget that will be exploded every time. And every time one group hears that they have had an agreement with Salva Kiir, and now they're on the table, another one emerges. So he has told us that he has reached a point of something like no return, because he has so many groups with so many demands, but the budget to look after them is shrinking.
Comrade Speaker and our dear...
And they were blaming Salva Kiir for seceding from the agreement.
Comrade,
because he was the one supposed to implement as a sitting president. That they said all the arguments that they agreed upon, they made, he has not implemented any. And so they are saying this, what is happening in South Sudan, he is responsible because he refused to implement what they agreed upon.
Comrade Speaker, and,
use 2 minutes.
Our dear esteemed viewers, the situation in South Sudan, like we have correctly observed, is rather a very disturbing situation, because it is, for instance, correct for anybody, including ourselves, to look at Salva Kiir and blame him for not implementing so much that has been agreed or was agreed on previously, simply because he is the head of state. But there are many actors. There are many actors, even including the first vice president, and bearing in mind the fact that he also has his own army. So we should not only put the heap of the blame on Salva Kiir. The truth of the matter is that the mix is much bigger. What is again of critical importance going forward, if you ask to me like you have, is that we need to get certain things done through the mind and the hands of what we call a strong man. We need a strong man who is going to bring the circumstances in Southern Sudan to have, for instance, the elections. However shabby the elections may be, if, for instance, it is a complete military takeover and inheritance, let that military takeover lead to the realization of general elections. If, for instance, because you see now as it is, Machar has been arrested, and I don't think that he's going to come back with the kind of pomp and the bargaining chip like he had previously. We need elections to take place regardless of how they do take place. We need to have the economy of South Sudan, because South Sudan is not a poor country. Don't be deceived. Why should the people of South Sudan be hungry? Why should the economy be dysfunctional? Just because the wananchi on the ground is not empowered. The leadership in Juba does not get entrenched to the lower grassroots. That's why you find that there is raiding. Police is not present, for instance, in the rural areas. The people have developed their own militia, the so-called Arrow Boys. They are everywhere. The white army, to protect their own little animals, which are being butchered by their neighbors. So we need, first of all, get the semblance of peace. There has got to be peace, whether that peace comes as a consequence of force or mutual agreement. Let peace reign first. Then finally, let the people get educated, civically, get empowered to realize that the problems they are suffering are brought onto them by no any other person but themselves, and it is themselves to get out of those problems. That way, you will get a broader spectrum of peace, such that even the external enemy, who we know is actually there, inside, will find a formidable force to contend with going forward.
But it's a really good point you point out, but like, I think it's also come to the question of democracy, and does South Sudan need democracy? Because you just said that so far they do not really have like a educated class on civil rights and the way to use the state for the population, right? In that situation, is it worth it to ask South Sudan to go to democracy, to go for elections? I'm asking the question, is election what South Sudan needs? I reshape your question, Irumba, because for me, right now, calling for election is also calling for weakening a power that is already really weak, right? And elections are expensive. Democracy is really expensive. Not every country can just run on democracy, I believe. You need to have, as my colleague said, a lot of an educated class. You need to have an educated class that understand how the state can be used as a tool for its populations, right? For the material benefit of its population, not for this faction, not for staying in power, not for this or that, right? So it's election in South Sudan what South Sudan need. Does South Sudan need democracy right now? Can we seriously believe that someone like Riach Machar will be more happy in a democratic system than in a system where he can fight to gain power. Because if he's in a democratic systems, his population that represents around 17 or 19% of the population of South Sudan will never reach power. Exactly like the Tutsi in Rwanda would have never reached power under the leadership of the one-party state, right? So at the time the LPF of Rwanda knows that elections will not lead to them gaining power. So if we do right now a democracy in South Sudan, that means that a big part of the population will be excluded from winning power for generations and generations. And we are full aware of that. So let me just finish. Do we have an educated class capable of use the democratic power that we're calling for building? Do we have a class capable of using the state as the tool to create economic opportunity for South Sudanese talent? Because right now the most talented South Sudanese has to leave South Sudan in order to use their talents, right? And so when we call for those elections, we should not be blinded by it. It's not because South Sudan has election tomorrow that South Sudan has peace, right? A peace can be also built on a strong power that wins over his enemies. A peace can be built into sharing power, in a sharing power agreement. And so far we have seen a sharing power agreement that did not deliver for South Sudanese. So we do have to think of other solutions, other situations, but at the end of the day, calling for elections could also lead to more drama in the country.
Thank you, Comrade Lisafre. Let's end with on a later note, Comrade Daniel Rugarama. Donald Trump has said he is very angry and pissed off with Russian President Vladimir Putin after weeks of attempting to negotiate a ceasefire in Ukraine. Here, President the US President criticized Putin for attacking Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's credibility and threatened to impose a 50% tariff on countries buying Russian oil if he didn't agree to a ceasefire. Putin suggested the possibility of a UN-run government in Ukraine to organize new elections and then begin peace talks. Trump's comments mark a change in the tone towards Putin. Over the past 6 weeks, Trump has publicly harangued Zelensky and demanded numerous concessions from Ukraine's president. Kakati, Comrade Rugarama, Putin, who has been in power for a period of years that I have forgotten, the suffering will remind me, is now accusing Zelensky of overstaying in power when his time is up, that he should have left even yesterday. His term ended, and then he's saying he's not the right guy to negotiate peace with. In fact, he was advising the UN to put up a government, an interim government, so that interim government organizes a general election. Then that president they bring through that government of UN-led, that leader is the one that Putin is willing to sit down with and negotiate peace.
So Trump is saying Putin.
Trump is pissed with that comment. So thank you very much, Comrade Lisafre Thomas, a veteran journalist and a dependable researcher, and a recipient of the Pan-African Pyramid Global Award, the class of 2024. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, my elder brother, senior Comrade Daniel Rugarama, a lawyer. He's a lawyer and also the chairman of the Pan-African Movement, Uganda chapter. Your speaker is Andrew Lumba Live. Thank you to my media partners, the NBS Television, Onyx Media, the Spy Uganda, Detective UG, and of course, our very own Pan-African Pyramid.